You know what's going on because you read the title, and that's how movie magic works. This is an Arken SH4 rifle scope. And I did a video on this thing probably about a month ago, something like that. And in that video, I mentioned that we were going to be beating the ever-living heck out of one of these, and that's what we're doing in today's video. So in that initial video, which I'll have linked in the description box down below for your viewing pleasure, I asked what kind of test you would like to see. And there were really two answers that came back, a waterproof test and a tracking test. So I thought, well, what we should do is we should do a waterproofing test and then beat the ever-living heck out of it, do a tracking test, and then do another waterproof test to see, if it maintains waterproofness. So I went over and lobbed this guy into the pool. We do things for science here, and that includes Curtis getting into a rather cold pool.
No.
This is nothing compared to what it was yesterday.
Oh, this just became a nightmare.
Cold enough that it was closed within 5 hours of me retrieving this rifle scope from that pool. Unfortunately, other things happen in science around here, particularly around here. This rifle scope died in that test. Apparently, it could not handle the 5-foot pool for 24 hours. It turns out that after talking to Arken, they went back through and looked at some of their manufacturing processes, and they've apparently found the source of the error that was causing loss of waterproofness. So we have another rifle scope in for testing. So we're going to use it. Since the last test was a little bit too much, 24 hours and a 5-foot pool, we're just going to go ahead and put it in my sink for 24 hours instead.
24 hours later.
This time around, no leakage or anything like that, so we can progress to the next set of tests, which is going to be a tracking test followed by a bad test.
Really? Like, I just turned the camera on and now we've got dueling chainsaws? Whatever. Tracking test. And I'm just going to explain what we're doing as we go along, but to start out with, in the interest of time, 3-round groups. This is just a baseline 0. Those guys are still at it with those freaking chainsaws. But anyway, what we've got here is some crappy shooting, but we're gonna call that 0.72. And the reason I'm doing this is we're about to draw on this piece of paper here for this test. So I'm gonna call the center right here, right in the center of the B there. 0.725 divided by 2 would give us the radius, so 0.36. And if I take this, we can pretty much agree that that is pretty close to the group size if we were to take that all the way around. What we're going to do now is add 10% to it. So now what I've done is created a plus 10% circle. So what I've done is generated a plus 10% circle around the center of that group. Now I'm going to go back and play with the tracking. I'm going to move the turrets up and left and right and print groups on this target and then try to get it to come back to the center. If it's within this circle, we're going to say that it tracks. Really not symmetrical. I did a terrible job on this. I have the 0 stop set on this thing, so I guess we'll test the 0 stop as well. And I'm just going to give it 6. So I just spun this dial to 6. Here we go. I wasn't really shooting for a group there. Now we'll take it all the way back down to 0 stop. Does it return? The horizontal route, spinning it to 6, all the way back the other way to 6L, and then back to 0. I hope that I did spin this thing all the way around. If you ever had a question on whether or not your host is incompetent or not, then today can settle it. Left hand 6. Numbers need to get smaller, Kurt.
As you guys can see, we had another group all the way over here on the right because I spun the thing the wrong way. But all in all, it seems to be pretty consistent, and I went ahead and marked all the holes for future reference. What we are looking for in subsequent tests is that we maintain the same pattern.
Okay, so now it's time to actually do some testing. That was just the baseline. So first things first, firearm is unloaded. You guys heard it click. Handy dandy makeshift chamber flag. Still unloaded. We've all had one of those situations, or if you haven't had one yet, you will have one, where you didn't set the rifle up the best and it fell over. So, oh look. Whew. Okay, so that was relatively easy. Some scuffs on the turrets and things like that, but some of us have also been walking in the woods and done some things. That is a turret-shaped hole. We've gotten the top turret. We've gotten the laser module, etc., you know. We haven't hit the windage turret yet. Why not do it big? Looks like I gave it a little bit of rotation on its way down, so we got to drop it again. Okay. Oh. That is where the windage turret smacked the concrete. Yeah, solid impact. So our zero stop, or our turret when I adjusted it to zero, is the way it works. If you watch the original video, there are these bolts here that kind of hold it into place. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like 4 bolts. No, maybe just 3 bolts. Looks like 3 bolts that hold this sucker in its place, and it looks like I just didn't have them tight enough, or they have jarred loose. So I'm going to tighten those back down. And the windage, that's the windage turret. The elevation turret seems to not feel good. Ooh, it is bent. The cap is deformed. So I'm gonna loosen it and then try to put it back on. Okay, so first things first, we're just gonna return this one to 0 because this is gonna be probably the most benign here. Okay, so now on to this guy up top. It looks pretty bad, but I think it might just be the cap. So what we're gonna do is just loosen it and see what happens when we take it off. What I'm really looking for is I wanna take this thing off and see if basically the turrets, the actual mechanics of the turret underneath are damaged at all. Yeah, we've got a little bit of scarring on the turrets themselves where those steel pieces of metal basically scrated across it. I'll get some shots for you guys. It is displeased to be here. We're gonna continue anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and zip these down real quick. And basically from there, what we're gonna do is see if it tracks still. I think we've had enough of that for one day. I have no idea what kind of FUD-tastics are going on over on the next property, but I sincerely apologize to you guys. Whatever. They had better be making an awesome sculpture. That's all I have to say. Shooting a little bit to the left, which could possibly be the impact caused this thing to spin. I'm not going to discount that possibility. So what we're going to do is basically keep in mind that we should see everything off slightly to the left, if indeed it does track. So here we go. We're gonna try vertical. I'm not entirely sure that this is gonna work, but we're gonna go up to 6, and it's really hard right there. I can feel it grating against the... All right, I'm man bear picking it now. All right, we're on 6. I had to try really hard to do that. Going back to 0. It's a little bit easier to take it back. Let's go right. So going to R 6. And we're going to go back to center again. So that would be, numbers get smaller, Kurt. Okay, and now we're going to go down to L6. Just spin it that way. Did I just do that wrong? I had hold of it. I think I just screwed it up again. I don't know, I think it's an optical illusion about how they've got this turret set up. I'm not trying to say that it's wrong. I'm just saying that I'm not using it very well.
Fairly consistent on everything being to the left, but it also looks to me like we have a little bit of an elevation problem. That said, what I want to focus on is that everything seems to model the same pattern. So it's not like we stripped away any of the adjustments or anything like that. It just deviated the entire thing by a factor.
Okay, one more test for tonight before I pack it in for the evening and go back to the sink. I want to test to see if this mount will maintain 0. So what we're going to do is just crack these bolts real quick. And there are 3 screws here. What I'm going to do, to be fair to it, is I'm going to put it on the exact same way that I put it on last time. I have it marked here where it was. So we're just going to go ahead and set it right like that. And then all I'm going to do is tighten the center screw until it holds the scope into place. And then I'll tighten the other screws edgewise. But let me just check them one more time. Yep. No movement. No movement. Okay.
Remember that the original reference group was shot after we dropped it, and it seems to me like it's doing respectably. If I was really tedious with remounting this, I could probably get it to hit the same group. But this is why throw lever QD mounts exist. So I don't know why I was so upset about it at the time. I don't know if it was the rifle, because the rifle's really expensive, but it's an AR, so I mean, we'll be fine anyway. Or if it was the scope, because I was kind of like raised to not drop guns on the scope. Like literally the saying was sacrifice the body, you'll heal, the scope won't type thing. Whatever. It was against my nature to do that. So anyway, what did we find out? Well, when I got it back to the shop, I immediately went and put it back in the sink for 24 hours.
I hope that's just the air behind the turret wheel.
And sure enough, it maintained waterproofness, even after being trounced a whole bunch of times. I'd say that they've addressed that problem pretty well. Now, I wanted to take the thing apart to see if we did any more internal damage, and sure enough, it wasn't just the elevation cap that we bent. We bent the internal strut to the left ever so slightly. Of course, me wanting to continue the testing on this thing, I went at it as gently and as scientifical as I could possibly go to bend that thing back. And now it doesn't grind or bind when I move it around. It seems to work fine. You can even hear the audible clicks and feel them as you move the thing throughout its range. So the next step that I have for this particular optic, now that it's completed that side of things, is to throw it up to you guys, see if there's anything else that you want to see done with it. But basically what I plan to do is for the next month to throw it on everything that I shoot, to basically see if there's any problems. Does the reticle come apart? Does it lose 0 or anything like that over the course of the next month? And then I'm going to do a recap. So if you have something that you want to see done with it now that it's been thrashed around, leave a comment in the comment section down below. I'll see if it's feasible and we'll try to accomplish it. But as far as I'm concerned, it looks to me like even if you drop it hard, that the thing is going to maintain some semblance of 0. You may have to re-zero it after you have bent the internal strut, but it looks like it's going to continue to track after you've made that minor adjustment. One last thing I wanted to restate before we go. The reason that this is so interesting to me is because the price point of this scope. This is not a $2,000 scope. This is a $400 scope. For a 4 to 16 power scope, as in a factor of 4 scope, not the 3 to 9 junky stuff or the LPVO really low end stuff. A 4X 4 to 16 scope for $400 is, I was very skeptical to begin with, and it looks to me like they're doing a pretty good job as far as manufacturing these in a way to be able to take abuse. Of course, that is after the second round of testing. We're going to see what happens in the next month.